and welcome to the Esports Meta. Gamers, grinders, glory chasers, all alike, your spot to learn the latest news and updates happening in the competitive video game world of esports. I'm Billy Sims, your host with the most today, and we'll be talking about a lot of cool things today. But before we get into that, I'd like to welcome Nick Layton. How you doing? How you feeling today?
Feeling pretty good. I am still recovering from an illness for about 2 weeks now, so hopefully my voice will be in tip-top shape soon enough, and I'll be able to grace everybody's presence with my voice. But until then, I'm quite raspy and moving along.
You're giving if Kermit the Frog had an esports podcast vibe right now.
You frog here, yeah. No, it's a rough one. I'm getting better though, but it's been about 2 weeks that I've been sick like this. So,
well,
perfect timing.
Glad you can make it. Glad you can make it, my dude. Glad you're here. We can talk about these things and get caught up. Our topics today, we'll be talking about a few score recaps of all the esports competition that happened this weekend. We've got a few headlines we're going to be going over, but our main subject is toxicity in esports. Is esports inherently toxic? It's a big topic, and we'll get all into that later, but let's start with some score recap. All right, let's bring it up. First and foremost, we were telling you about the Mythic Dungeon Invitational as well as the Arena World Championships that were happening this past weekend. It was a very exciting weekend for WoW Esports. The MDI occurred. Nick, did you get to watch this weekend, or were you resting up drinking all that tea?
So I did manage to get a little bit of it in, but I was mostly resting. So I didn't get to see full matches and everything like that, but what I did see, if you are a WoW fan, it is super exciting to watch these things. Some of the comps that come out are super unique in the sense of like what they do and what they're going to be doing. So definitely check it out if you're into that.
Right. Like, of course, the Arena World Championships, though, anybody doing arenas on a high level knows that the comp speciality, the specifics are like so nuanced and really comes down to a lot of like who's playing what, because one single player makes all the difference on a class. But then with the MDI, the Mythic Dungeon Invitationals, that's such an interesting thing because it's almost like competitive speed running. Speed running is naturally competitive, but like usually it's a solo setting. Here, it's a competitive, like almost Olympic style setting where you're racing other people at the same time. The gun fires and everyone goes. So that comp point that you're making really makes it a lot bigger of a thing, much more interesting to see all the nuance and the balance and the strategy and tactic of how they do it.
Exactly. The strategies that they use in these things are like you would never even think of them. Like half of the things that they do in some of these dungeons are insane exploitations of certain mechanics in the levels that you would never actually see in like a normal run. Just to be able to squeak out like, one more second or something along those lines.
10 more percent on mobs. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So real quick, let's do a brief intro of how it works and what happened this weekend. Then we'll talk specifically about those nuances and those comps that we saw this weekend. And let's kind of I'm going to move through this a little quickly because we have a bunch of headlines to get through, as well as scores. It's a best of 3 series this weekend with pick and ban on dungeons. There were a lot of Cataclysm dungeons, a lot of Legion dungeons, as well as BFA. And, standard pick ban. One team got the home advantage and would pick a dungeon they want to do. The others would ban a dungeon that they want to do. So it like leveled out the competition. Generally speaking, we saw a lot of different, what are they called? Affixes, I believe they're called. But a big one that was kind of a thorn in people's side was the fortified storming and bursting, adding those extra little modifiers to challenge them in each of the dungeons. And like in specific dungeons with higher mob density or with like bigger, badder bosses, it could really make all the difference. So with that specifically being talked about, I want to show you a little bit of the standings and from this recap of weekends. Moving down, we saw that Echo and Legendary were our top dogs. Not to mention literally dogs coming in tied for third. there was a lot of excitement. Echo was the clear front runner through most of it, but that got shook up by Dogs and some of the comps they were able to run. Echoes ran a 4 DPS, 1 tank comp. And Nick, I kind of want your thoughts with that idea. We saw that happen. Echo didn't start the trend, but like they did it, and they probably did it on the riskiest dungeon, and like they cleared it, no deaths, but Dogs still beat them with a tank, which was super interesting to see, and the pathing choices that were made there. So Nick, what's your thoughts with like a 4 DPS comp in something like this in 1 tank?
Mad lads, bro. They're just mad lads. Like, they're absolute mad lads. Like, going into this, when they're just like, just take off your armor. Just get rid of it. Like, let's just go faster. Let's kill things more and do more damage. They're just mad lads. Like, pure psychotic behavior that ended up working out in their behavior. Like, working out in their favor. Like, it's beautiful when it comes together, but like the variance is huge, right? Like, not everybody can just walk in and go like,
right,
yeah, we're doing that. We're doing that today. It's not happening.
It takes a much different strategy and approach, because even like there was one other team, I forget who did it, but they ran a 4 DPS comp, but they had a boomkin, which historically is a little sketch, but because they're a druid hybrid, they were able to play more defensive and add a higher DPS than a resto druid could and would at times. So it's a lot about the strategy you're able to take in that mad lads situation, and really knowing when to take damage, how to take damage, or even just where to stand, how to stand, when to stand.
I'm convinced that anybody who plays like a Moonkin like that, they're just an Overwatch healer. Like, they're Overwatch healers. Like, they know how to kill people, and they're just like, yeah, you gotta yell at them a couple times to get those heals off, but they're gonna kill people and they're gonna do so much more damage.
Right. And the first thing that they'll say is like, you're not in danger, you're fine, we can wait to heal you.
Exactly. I mean, hey, they do it up on the big stage is it's guts, man. Like, to be able to just like tell your managers, tell your coaches that like, you're gonna do this. Like, I'm gonna go into this, and we're gonna go our plan, not your plan. Like, it's wild. It's just wild, man.
Right, and they chose to do this on arguably one of the hardest dungeons. It's a new one from Dragonflight. It's the Fall of Galakron, the Rise of the Infinite. So it's a very lore deep dungeon, but the mechanics are very time-based, very poison-based. So there's a lot of room for error in that strategy, and it like a lot could argue that you want that healer, because then you could just go more aggressive. And truth be told, Dogs did outpace Echo in the 4 DPS strat because they had the healer. They were able to take 4 pulls rather than 5 pulls. But like, Echo was able to do a 4 DPS strategy in other dungeons, no problem, and like pulled it out. And like the standings at the end here, you know, show why it worked, how it worked. They have the points. They're one step closer to going to globals.
When you do something like this, like, people do have to be aware. It's no disrespect to like the people who don't do it right, but when you do this unconventional, and I'll call it nonsense, because like, it's not your first choice, right? It's like someone dared you and your team in order to do it. They have such a profound understanding of what goes on in these dungeons to be able to do this sort of thing.
Right, and it's like the end of the expansion too. So they've been doing it for what, 1.5 years, 2 years almost, like day in, day out. They know every part of these things, let alone the gearing. Of course, we're at the end. There's going to be a higher gear score in these mythics. They're running 23s, 24s, no problems. 24s, 25 seem to kind of get a little sketchy, but anyway, Group B is going to be competing on the 23rd through the 25th, coming up this weekend. Yeah, today's the 20th. So you can watch the next phase of group standings this weekend. And then keep an eye out for the globals, because all these teams are fighting for a place in the global tournament in March 8th, I believe it is. Looking exciting. All right. Moving into the next score. We also had Valorant kickoff groups. I think a Valorant kickoff tournament was this weekend. Yes. All right. That's the official name of it. I wanted to make sure I got it correctly. What is it? 10 teams were competing, 11 teams were competing. They're still competing. The tournament's still going on. They just did phase one of the groups tournament, but it was fairly exciting. If I'm honest, I kind of fall off on the nuance of the strategy with Valorant. It's a little bit tighter for me, a little bit slower, but it was pretty cool. I was watching Crew versus G2 and the back and forth of each round and the map picking selections. It was pretty fascinating. Nick, what's your experience with Valorant? And did you get to watch some of the VCT this weekend, the kickoff tourney?
So I always watch like 100 Thieves, like regardless of where they are. That's one of my like favorite teams.
Right.
It's mostly because like Nate Shot, right? Like Nate Shot like runs the team, owns the team.
Yeah. OG Halo player.
Yeah, like I've met him a bunch of times. Like not that he'd actually remember me, right? Because he's only like, oh hey, it's Nate Shot. It's like a Halo reach tournament or something stupid. Like I don't remember what game it was, right? But he's a cool guy, and I thoroughly enjoy like their merch, and I've liked like a lot of their things that happened with them, and like I think like Drake owns part of the team, so I kind of joke about it. So because like Ariana Grande like posted about 100 Thieves, and I was like, what the hell is going on here, Ariana Grande? With your 100 Thieves, like hasn't posted anything about him since, but I was like, wait, who is this? And then I looked into it, I was like, oh, Nate Shot? And you got Drake? I was like, all right, then, let's go.
Super exciting. Unfortunately, my friend, I hate to bring the bearer of bad news, but they didn't do too hot this weekend. They ended up losing to Sentinels 2-1, so it was pretty competitive in the lower bracket semis, but they might be bouncing out of this kickoff tournament kind of not early, but kind of early. Just to kind of gets the best of us. And maybe Valorant isn't their team, right? They might have a stronger team over at Apex or in Fortnite,
League, or anything like that, right?
Yeah. But just to kind of run through a little bit, NRG over Furia 2-0. Cloud9 took on MIBR. I think is it Member? MIBR. Well, anyway, 2-1. So Cloud9 NRG will be coming up next week, I believe, in the finals. For lower bracket, Loud beat Sentinels pretty easily 2-0. Leviathan over 100 Thieves. So it's a Leviathan and Loud playing next. And then you can see in the down here, G2 over Crew. This is the series that I watched, which was fairly good. Pretty exciting. Went back and forth a lot. They couldn't quite get a number on each other. And like they'll be heading to face Evil Geniuses in the upper bracket finals here. Of course, best of luck to these guys. We'll be watching the next phase of this tournament coming up, seeing what kind of strategy. And I'm hoping to learn a lot more about the nuance of this game because it is super precise and the very teamwork heavy. And I really enjoy that about this.
It's a solid game. It's like CS:GO mixed with like a little bit of Overwatch for the most part, just because of like how often you can have members on the enemy team or your team just be up in the air, flying around, like zapping around, doing all sorts of things, making little bubbles and stuff like that. So you never know. But it is a hard game to like follow if you're not into it.
Right. You really rely on people to have your back, cover angles, attack a thing. And like there's a lot of strategy in sending 3 one direction versus sending 1 or 2. And it could make all the difference in each round. But anyway, we're going to move on to the next scores. And this one's a fairly brief one because more or less it's just like, hey, check this out kind of thing. The Fortnite Championship Series Major is starting. The Brazilian region is actually going on today, but I believe this weekend was the Americas. So if you're interested and you're in these regions, go ahead, compete. Let us know how you're doing. Hit up the comment section. Do all the fun internet stuff because, the algorithm gods demand a sacrifice. Either way, we'll be watching along. It's Fortnite. It was always interesting to me because of the grandeur it took on from its origin and the attention it's able to get. And now that Disney's investing into Epic Games, and it's going to take a little bit, but we'll definitely see these tournaments scale up in competitiveness, in prize pot. Where there's money, players are going to follow. Where there's money, companies are going to follow. So it's going to be interesting to watch how it is now and see how the battle royales develop in the future for this. And like I said, this major is starting this past weekend. There hasn't been any final winners yet, but it'll be cool to watch and continue to play through it. But that brings me, unless Nick, if you have something to add to this, that's going to bring me to our next point of news.
No, I don't have much. Just if there's 13-year-olds out here just whooping butt and like going to these big tournaments and just like chapping cheeks, like kind of wild. Like this is a 13-year-old. I can't even fathom. Like,
right? They've been growing up on this. Their Twitch reflex is super high. Like they can just nail some shots.
True.
But like Fortnite, as we both know, it's a competitive builder as much as it's a competitive shooter. How you can strategically rock paper scissors with the building components and like make the space and win that 1v1 mind game, even if you have a duo. But anyway, moving on to the next one, Nick, we're going to move into headlines now. This first headline really is compatible with the Fortnite news because it's talking about that Chapter 5 Season 2 release date is coming up, and it's going to let us know a little bit of a rival. It's being reported that it's going to come in March, meaning the current season is going to finish by March, probably about finish around the end of this tournament so that it's a nice clean switch. Not really much about how updates. It's going to be new world building, gameplay features, and more arriving. It's still really vague. They have a launch trailer that's out. Fortnite's always doing the affiliate marketing, always doing the crossover events with Marvel or Star Wars or some random celebrity athlete, which is super cool and fun to be a part of. But like, it's the same affair. Competitively, I'm not sure how the changes are going to be, but just keep an eye out on this one because we know Season 2 is coming in about a month from now. Yeah.
Yeah, something to definitely keep an eye out on. How the game is going to change just overall.
Right. And like usually these season changes make a huge impact in how strategies are made, how the meta game works out. And Fortnite's not one that shies away from like big additions like gliders or jetpacks or specific guns that become. Do you remember what happened when they added the lightsaber or the Infinity Gauntlet?
I was actually going to say before that when they added the S word, the sword.
Oh yeah,
it just broke the game. When like $100,000 tournament was won by one sword swipe to like the bottom of a base. So, and you never like they don't try to break their game, but they are not above breaking their game.
Right.
By putting something new in.
You got to applaud them a bit for taking those risks sometimes because it makes for an entertaining game, even though sometimes competitive aspects can feel very coin flippy. And like, of course, any sort of professional doesn't want something to be too coin flippy, but you win some, you lose some, of course. And then literally with the patch notes, you win some, you lose some. Sometimes those new additions break the game. You get one sword swipe.
They might add in the House of Mouse. And then, like, you just build Mickey Mouse's house and you win the game. You never know.
Right? It's like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Getting all 5 pieces of Exodia together. Some anime stuff. All right. We're going to move on to our next headline. It's kind of another brief topic because I did want to share my thoughts, but see what your thoughts were and maybe anybody else's thoughts on this. As Overwatch League has come to an end and we're seeing the new Overwatch esports scene develop, especially now that the competitions are starting. Faceit's first Overwatch tournament happened last weekend. We're getting more news and talk about the breaking points and the behind the scenes stuff that happened with Overwatch League. In fact, last week an Overwatch GM talked with Dextero about why and how he thought the breaking point of the league was. Just kind of briefly going down here through the interview, talking about how it was a slow death almost because it felt like COVID really did them in. They weren't able to. And then, of course, all the teams voted to dissolve the league and back out of it. So a lot of the franchises, those teams are still in competitive Overwatch, like Toronto, but you're seeing more and more now step away from competitive esports. So the focus here is on who was a manager last for the Florida Mayhem. They did win the last grand finals. He was really talking and pointing to the lack of Western personalities, as well as the focus point of an Overwatch league was the in-person homestands. And once that failed to happen because of COVID, it was really just like there was a no-win situation here. And at that point, they were doing a lot to scramble. In a sense, I might be being dramatic here. They were scrambling to make it work and find the business model within that business model. Nick, does this really come as a surprise that really it was the lack of homestands was like the psychological kill?
So like that part's not surprising. Well, that part's a little surprising. The part that's really not surprising would be like the lack of Western personalities. Like it tends to happen in a lot of the esports games. What I mean by that is if you're going to allow imports, there's always going to be like a preferential treatment to like South Korean kids. About how good they are in League or how good they are in some other game, right? They can have the same connotation to them. So if your thoughts are instead of like training a player up and just like grabbing one from another region that's already been proven, like that kind of happens a little too often in esports because it's more about like the upfront money rather than like the long-term money, you know?
Right.
So,
and like, in that way, esports is very capitalistic. It's very do or die. You need to win now because there won't be a tomorrow. So like that, of course, spend the money while you have it, while you have that opportunity versus waiting. I have seen in a lot of behind the scenes podcasts or general personality podcasts from the coaches. There's a podcast called Uncoachable that I've tuned into a couple times, and they're getting some traction to it. But it's former head coaches and people within the scene that like they invite and they have interviews and they talk about it. And a very big reoccurring topic ends up being: do you go a full Korean roster? Do you go a full Western roster? Do you do a hybrid? And then even the nuance of team house versus no team house makes a difference, and like could have its pluses or minuses. So that Western personality thing, it's interesting you took it in that manner because I could see that. Like there is a much different culture with video games in the East, in the Asia regions versus North America versus Europe. And even just for the longevity of it, it's been around a lot longer. It's taken much more serious. I think League, the accounts are associated with your social security number, essentially. And like that's such an anecdotal thing to say, but it's such a serious notion. Whereas in the US, you can have 10 Overwatch accounts because you have 10 different emails.
And like one of the big differences, right? Like I think his name was the Flash. Do you know who the Flash is?
Besides the comic book character, no.
I think his name was the Flash. But obviously it's going to come up. It's like one of the best StarCraft 2 players in the world, right? It might just be called Flash. Or something along those lines, right? Flash Gamer. Yeah, there we go.
Sure.
Lee Young-ho, right? This man is a celebrity, right? In Korea, you aspire to be Flash. Selling out stadiums so that people will come watch you play video games.
Yeah.
In the West over here, people want to be XQC. They want to be Tyler 1. You know? They don't want to be Shroud. Like, some of these people are like players in their own right. They're like pros at one time, what have you. But that's not what people are aspiring to be. They want to be VTubers, YouTube streamers, stuff like that, instead of being like the best at like a sport, right?
Fair.
I think that's like a little bit different. Something to like think about, like when you're getting these players, like some of them just might want to be the best player in the world. Other ones might just want to make money off playing video games.
Right. And I mean, with that though, I think that might talk specifically with Overwatch, the Blizzard effect. We're talking about personalities, and one of Yaz criticisms is lack of Western personality. And personality doesn't mean you need to be the best in the world. Personality means you're showing your characteristics, your traits, your humor, your personality. Literally, like if you're a funny guy, if you're a shy guy, if you're, like an aggressive kind of guy within reason, but because we'll talk about toxicity in a minute, but that might be the Blizzard effect where they really stamped their PR team. XQC was definitely stifled. And it's amazing that an XQC came from an Overwatch league and that he was making more money streaming and doing that with his very gimmicky setup, react videos, and like, hey, let the man get the bag. He's found success. Absolutely happy for him in that way too. But like that dude is using a shit camera on a computer, and he'll just squat there. And like he's found a way to make that entertaining, and he's been able to do that better than an Overwatch league with millions of dollars behind it, with a huge corporation, small indie company able to like market it and etc. So like I think that Western personality thing is super interesting because it's not just about who's the best at the game, the number one competitive player, but it's also about being able to show people who they are, and then how maybe Blizzard stamped that out and how they like throttled it.
Yeah, like maybe they should thought about like bringing on streamers into their organization, and then having like a streamer team versus their pro team, in order to get people like more interested into the actual sport. Take some of that hype.
I know that's what a lot of the intro teams, the Dallas team initially started as that. That was the team XQC was on. They brought a lot of personalities who were also in the competitive scene into it. Atlanta Reign did the same thing. I'm much more familiar with this stuff because I've kept track over the years. But like, it's incredible how they weren't able to integrate properly. There's some teams that did it and they were okay at it, but they didn't find competitive success. But then there's other teams that like didn't do it at all, basically. And like, that might be the criticism here and might be the shocking part. But anyway, unless you have any final thoughts on this, let's move on to the next headline. More or less, they announced that the Pokemon League championships are coming to Europe, London specifically. They're going to have a launch date of the tournament. They announced all the stuff. It's kicking off April 5th through the 7th in London. And we have all the Europe international details here. Pokemon's always been interesting as far as how their competitive stuff goes, but more or less. Are you excited for this? Is there a specific game you're looking to watch? Or
Super excited. Super excited. Let me explain to you something, okay? Right. Have you watched any of these?
Yes, I've seen these. They're fantastic.
So they're 2-on-2, right? This new rule setting allows you to have, this is for the VCG, right?
Okay, yeah.
This allows you to have the legendary Pokemon. Like, everybody that's been banned before is essentially getting on, like, allowed to be picked. So these really crazy characters that have never been allowed in competitive play are now being allowed into the competitive rosters. And like, oh, wow. You're going to see some really crazy stuff, dude. And like, I love Wolf Glick's channel. Okay. Wolf Glick is the man. He does some really fun videos and stuff like that. Yeah. But he participates in all of these in general. And it's super exciting to see like really fresh Pokemon getting entered into these like competitions in general. And there's some really like Tatsugiri is pretty crazy. The fact that it just like fusions with another Pokemon like on the field and it's just a 1v2 is it's insane. A lot of crazy stuff that happens in Pokemon.
Yeah, so Nick, I've got a quick question for you, but real quick, we have a comment from Isaiah. Hi, how are you guys? Hope you're having a good day. Thank you, Isaiah. Hope you're having a good day too. How do I join sports? I was in esports my school last year. I was a Madden gamer, got 4th place in states. Cool. Congrats on getting 4th. That's a huge accomplishment, especially in Madden. Madden can be very mind gamey, very competitive in that way. I've been following a person on YouTube. He's a former QB, Kurt Bernard, I think his name is. He played for the Packers. He played for the Falcons, I think, as well. He was a backup quarterback for Aaron Rodgers, and he's doing a lot of breakdowns on Madden and tutorials. So I would say my advice in that way is get better. Not to say you're bad, but like we can always improve. Find ways to look at how other streamers are playing, etc. But then B, there's a lot of more competitive esports happening in the college scene, the collegiate scene. If you're still in high school, start looking at what tournaments are grassroots. Start looking at what tournaments are in the competitive scene. Madden is a kind of exclusive IP, so like owned by EA. So like they're not super lenient on letting a lot of grassroots tournaments happen, but it is a place where there are a lot of players that want to have those, so you can find them. It might be a little harder to find the major that's not associated with the NFL, is what I'm saying. If I was in your standpoint, playing Madden, I would try to get better at Madden, learn better coverages, learn the mechanics of the games a little bit more, because the physics engines, sometimes there's a little nuanced things that pro players will do that make that little edge. And then beyond that, compete more. And to compete, I'd look for colleges that have esports programs. We're seeing a lot more with Overwatch as well as Fortnite, because it's like some of the bigger competitive scenes with money behind it. But you know, at the very least, these colleges will have clubs, and who knows, if you're still a high school student looking to get into that, you might be able to start doing it as a high school student. Nick, any advice for Isaiah here?
Mostly like the same stuff. College is going to be huge, but it's mostly going to be huge for like a networking aspect of it. Like the people that you'll meet going to these college tournaments, you might not even realize now, but like I met Mewtwo King going to a college Smash tournament, and that was
Mewtwo King is
one of the best players.
Just in case you're not sure who Mewtwo King is, he's a very famous Smash Melee, Brawl, and Ultimate player. He's a very well-known personality.
So like you'll never know who you meet at like these college level events, because half the time people are going to be doing like practice there, but they're going to be trying stuff that isn't like so risky to do in like a bigger event, right? So you'll be able to do it in the smaller events and stuff like that. But you might really be surprised on who you connect with, and just by having those few connections, they might see other tournaments that you don't see, and you guys get to carpool, get to do that together. That's where I would probably say more of like the networking aspect of it, like meeting more people who are into it, just as you are, would like benefit you a ton.
That's a great point with it. And I know this is a topic we're going to end up talking about in a couple weeks, I believe, but your focus might be on the esports specifically. If you're into Madden, or if you're into Smash, Melee, Ultimate, whatever game it is you're into, you're going to want to get better at that. But enjoy the ride as you're doing it. Look at it as a multifaceted sort of thing. You do want to get better. You do have to pour hours into getting better, but the networking part is super, super duper important. Like Nick is saying, you never know who you're going to meet. And you go to an event, you might find a new training partner. You might find a new best friend. You might find somebody who you can split car and hotel with to get to these events. On top of which, if the video game professionally part doesn't work out, you might find a job within that community still because of the people you met in that. So like it is also developing your social aspect to it. And basically, to be very frank, not learning how not to be a dick, because a lot of people go in and like, oh, I'm God's gift to this game. And you know, and that's kind of the topic for today, that toxicity. Sometimes you have to walk in with some BDE energy, but at the same time, you have to make friends. You got to like find ways to get to that goal you need to. And not everybody can be a Mewtwo King. Not everybody can sit there and be at the top, but that's why the competitions happen. And the more you do, the better you get. you want to do that, but then also like develop your network.
I will say one thing to end on for this would be like, if you go to any tournament, right, and at any given point, yeah, like in being in high school and being in college, it's really just going to be the sports clubs themselves. Um, there's specific games, but I'm not too deep on Madden to where I would know exactly where to look specifically. But some of the, like, I would hope some of the colleges have that with Madden. Let's see.
Right. I'm doing that quickly too, just to kind of take a look here. But just to follow up on the question here, looking to try to get to esports again right now. Any places specific I can join. Last week we got to talk about Overwatch's new foyer into Face It because they have a whole new system in place. The Overwatch League failed, and now they're doing a whole new a system and setup with a lot more tournaments, etc. So one of the places is Face It, I would say. Face It, FACEIT.com. This is a place that holds online tournaments where you can pick where you want to play, when you want to play. They hold you make teams, you can find teams. There are specific games. Trying to find CSGO, Apex Legends, Overwatch. Trying to find where it shows the teams. Is it a home? No. But there's a lot here. If you search something like Madden online tournaments, you might be able to find those grassroots happening to the degree that you want it to be. Beyond that, it's kind of a lot of legwork, but calling specific game stores, asking if they're holding a tournament. And if you're finding that your area doesn't have it and there's a demand for it, or you just want to run the house, ask a video game store if you can run the tournament. A lot of times they're pretty okay with it if it gets people in the door. And that's like the systems that we come from. Basically a lot more grassroots stuff, a lot of make it happen, because about 20 years ago, when I was 13, like that shit was non-existent. That you'd have to go and find these tournaments, traveling to Maryland to play Super Smash Bros. Melee against my friends, even trying to play Madden against my friends, like just inviting them over my house to hang out kind of thing. So it's a lot. There could be a lot of things, but like just Google is your best friend here, and don't be afraid to cold call. And then worst case, set up your own with friends. And the more you do, the more people get involved, and then you can connect. And that's part of that networking thing. Online has made it fantastic for it. So it's definitely a lot easier these days, but it can be somewhat challenging too that way. Pros and cons. When is the next tournament, and what games do you guys play in? Well, Nick, you're playing in a MTG tournament, Magic the Gathering tournament tomorrow, right?
That was last week. Last week I ended up doing that on well, tomorrow I do it, but that's like a local, more like a practice run. I did a 1K on Saturday, which was, for like, this is $1,000. I think like first place is like $400. But like Magic's a little unique where that community is so tightly knit that any one of these like 1Ks, 5Ks, 10Ks, they end up getting posted online, and at like MTG top 8 decks, I think it's called. MTG top 8, I think it's called. Is like the easiest spot for me to find out like upcoming tournaments or tournaments that might have just already happened. And that's pretty much it. Like I don't really compete too much anymore on in other games. Like I used to participate in Smash, but that was pretty much it. Like Smash and Magic were like my big ones.
Right. A lot of it comes down to specifically the game you're looking for, when you want to compete in. If you're asking just in general what the next, I believe there's a major Fortnite tournament happening today starting, but that's Brazil region. I think the Americas started this weekend. this coming weekend, we're seeing WoW Mythic MDI. Madden tournaments, I'm not entirely sure. I haven't seen news for, and we're just starting in this this journey of this podcast. This is our second episode, so we're trying to find some good content for the future and seeing how it's going to play out. Madden a lot of times will do associations with NFL because it's the NFL. Is this a most recent Madden 24 tournaments? They usually launch in September, and I would assume that they'd finish up by the Super Bowl. But going
it's usually on the release of a new Madden game. Like every single like GameStop or whatever has like a tournament too.
Yeah. Google's going to be your friend here. Googling specific Madden online tournaments, Madden esport. I'm going to be doing this in the future as we develop the podcast and we're adding more scheduling to it. But right now, currently, I'm big into Overwatch. I'm big into Smash and some other fighting games, and Pokemon. Actually, Nick's got his favorites as well. But best of luck to you, Isaiah. If you have any other questions, tune in, hit subscribe. You know the deal there. We're happy to help you do what we can. Hopefully we can see you progress, make some connections here and now. So when you become the number one Madden player in the world, we can say we knew him first. So Nick, let's get back on topic a little bit here. We were talking about the Pokemon series, and I had a question for you specifically because you said they've released new rules allowing new and different Pokemon to play. And is that specifically for the card game or the video game?
Specifically for the video game itself.
All right. So coming up in London in April, the video game, is it a rule that they changed where players who are trying to enter right now can utilize, or is it going to happen for the international specifically?
No. This was like as soon as they changed the rules, it's VCG rules. Like so, every tournament goes by these rules.
Okay, that's great because then that gives a lead up, and we can kind of see how the meta develops and see what the players are playing specifically and how they're playing it. I'm pretty excited about that because Pokemon can tend to be pretty simple, but has the complexity of those choices, those strategies. So I'm really excited to see what happens when we get to see the international in London on April 8th, I believe.
Yeah, no, the Pokemon stuff is crazy. The card game stuff, I'm not like, I like the game. I think it's fun, but I don't really care to watch it competitively like that. But if you know even a little bit about Pokemon, the competitive VCG ends up becoming like really crazy.
Yeah. That's for sure. And then the TCG, the card game, also gets pretty crazy. Like, I do enjoy that about Pokemon, where it is not that it's explosive, where it feels coin flip that anybody can win, but like there's a lot of setup, there's a lot of strategy, and like you need that extra little push of who knows the meta the best to like make it happen. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Isaiah. Sorry, Nick, real quick. Thanks, Isaiah. Yeah, our next stream, we stream every Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Of course, hit follow, like, subscribe, all the internet things. It not only pleases the algorithm gods and helps us out, but it lets you know when we're live or when there's a new video out there. All right, so sorry, go ahead.
No, it's like it's just really interesting with the not too much with the card game, but with the actual game itself. The VCG rules kind of get crazy, and like as I said before, some of these Pokemon have never been played competitively before. They've never been allowed, and it's because these Pokemon have been cracked. Like they've just been really good off the jump. We already knew they were going to be good, so why even put them in?
No, that's fair.
You get some really really weird stuff in Pokemon where you have some like I think it was like Plusle ends up being like the spokesperson for like 2020's PCG, and it's a trash Pokemon. But the way that it was used ended up making it like be like a really top tier Pokemon in the meta. So, you know, it's stuff to like look out for.
Yeah, and that's wild because like in a lot of other games, Plusle is kind of shit. Excuse my French on this one, but like I know in Pokemon Go, he's absolutely trashed when it comes to the Great League, the Ultra League, and the Master League. But anyway, I'm digressing. Let's move on to our main topic because we are running short on time here. So our main topic today is talking about toxicity in esports. And is it naturally inherent to esports? Well, esports and sports, the competitiveness always draw into this. And that's, where I want to start with you, Nick. What are your thoughts on toxicity so we can kind of warm this conversation up a bit?
Every game is toxic. The same amount. You're only like you can have your preference of what you think is like the most toxic community.
Okay.
But that just means you haven't experienced it properly in another game, in my opinion. Like it's all the same. Like certain games like do things to like fight against it, but like people will say League is the most toxic game that there is. No shot. I played Halo. No shot. Like, and where did the Halo kids go? Was in the League.
Well,
like just throwing that out there. Was in the League.
With that, what do you think? Like, is there a point that like an esport or a sport or a gathering of people gets toxic because it almost feels like when a game is like even like Helldivers is the talk of the town right now, right? I don't know if there'll be a competitive Helldivers. Maybe it might be a Diablo style or MDI WoW style of like how far can you push esport. But like right now, it's cool to see the community working together. But like they've crashed servers for 2 straight weeks because of the volume of players that are playing this game. At what point does the amount of frustrations that players feel or the volume of players, you start seeing frustrations of understanding and ability come out and like start being toxic?
Dude, I have a kid, right? And one thing that people need to understand, it's okay for you to be uncomfortable. That's it. There's nothing else there.
That's a great
It's okay for you to be uncomfortable. Like the fact that you're uncomfortable, it might not mean anything. Like you might have a problem with like a word, but does that mean like that word is bad? Maybe not. Most likely it does. But it's not a bad thing inherently to be uncomfortable. And some people might think toxic behavior is just any behavior that might make them uncomfortable in the game to where they can't perform. Cut out the outside distractions. Understand that when a person is screaming at you or getting mad at you, that's because they want you to be just as upset as they are.
That's a great point.
Just don't talk back. Like, who cares about them? They're not a friend. Like, you're not buying them with any Christmas present. Like, see you, Chief. Like, I could not care less.
Right. Like, I think you told me this. You told me this years ago. If you're typing, if you're talking, you ain't playing. So like,
yeah.
There is a mental aspect of it. And like there, of course, and like it's usually to get you either on purpose frustrated or even not on purpose, subconsciously. I want to bring you to where I'm at so that you play worse.
I will tell you right now, if 2 players on my team start arguing back and forth, I'm reporting you for assisting the enemy team. Not even joking. Like you're both not playing the game now. I need you both reported for assisting the enemy team. You're helping them win.
That might be a bit dramatic, Nick. I mean, come on. Like we play some games together. You got to go pretty easy on me. I like to talk. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. But no, like that's like it's a joke. But
yeah,
that's exactly what happens. Is you're helping the enemy team win by typing. Who cares? And like there's certain players on the enemy team that literally might just want you to type and not play the game.
There with that too, there is a certain amount of strategizing to do it, and you have to be receptive to strategy from other people as well as be able to convey strategy in a way that people are going to be receptive to it. You catch more flies with honey kind of thing. I kind of want to bring this now to like a very interesting point. Really like is a study from years ago, and I'm going to walk you a little bit through this whole situation story. Really, it starts with this meme in a 2015 study. found that lower skilled male players of Halo 3 were more hostile to teammates with a female voice, but behaved more submissively to players with a male voice. Then on the flip side, higher skilled players, male players, would behave more positively to female players. And what they surmised in this study was that the hostility was gender based, but it was also in a sense of they thought they were threatened. And like anecdotally, here in this Tumblr thread, misogyny is a skill issue, meaning the toxicity of that was you're afraid that they're better than you or that they're going to make you worse or you're going to lose your value by being on a team with them. So it was almost like just undermining everything you could do with it. We did end up finding the full study from the National Library of Medicine. So it's a pretty legit thing talking about psychology of this gender-based. The study was very gender-based because the Halo 3 lobby, that was the caveat, the asterisk of it, and what they saw with the inequality of skill levels as well as the inequality of genders there. And ultimately, I think our message, I know, Nick, you'd agree with me, be more like those high skill players, you know, value somebody on their ability to like frag out, basically perform, and then work with them to help them to get better, or at least help you win. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, in a perfect world, everybody knowing why they're losing and why they're winning would be great. But that's not the case in these situations. I don't remember exactly like how old these guys were when they were doing this, but this is like 2007.
Yeah.
Okay. The Xbox 360. Like we just had online gaming start, and I don't want to be like devil's advocate in me is like at one point, like it or not, video games were a safe space for little dudes. Where like if they didn't want to interact with anybody else or any women, they didn't have to. And that could come from that. And I'm not saying it's like right whatsoever. I grew up with 4 sisters with a mom. Like it's shitty behavior all around. But I want to know like how old these kids were, you know, like what their home life was like. Most of the time, people who actually like super angry on games, like their life isn't great. Like their life
that's a
isn't
fair
great.
point. Like they're looking for a way to release, and like video games can be that, an internet lobby can be that, and that's like a big part of it, the trust. Because like, how do if I didn't know you, how would I trust you that you're right? If I'm just gonna, if I walk around New York City and everyone's saying, "Shut the fuck up," STFU. Pardon my language on this. This is the second time I've cursed. Oh my god. Oh my gosh.
You cursed too, John.
I'm toxic. I'm so sorry. If everyone's walking around saying STFU, you're not going to believe anybody, and they're not going to listen to everybody. So like, and that's a lot of what internet lobbies can be. It's just a lot of people walking around with that energy. So like it really like breeds distrust. But the more I get to know somebody, the more I play with somebody, the more they validate their own opinions by like it working. That's the more I trust them, the more I'm able to continue on that. So like,
I mean, like
I was just going to say, continuing with it, like when a population of a game gets big enough, there's a lot more variance of like, I don't know the person. So there's more variance of, I don't trust people.
just have to realize that like inherently people aren't getting on the game to just ruin your life.
Right. And that's something
Like,
you can control on the internal. Absolutely, man. That's a great point, because it's something you individually can control, and changing your point. Not everybody's out to get you. Right. I love this saying. Don't blame malice when you can blame ignorance. Don't blame somebody doing something on purpose to ruin your life when it could have just been them oblivious, not knowing what they're doing, like just making a mistake. And that's what happens. And I think that's such a good mindset to have with these things. Cause like ultimately the question we're trying to answer, and I say that air quotes, cause I don't think we're just adding some nonsensical talk here, is esports inherently toxic? Is sports inherently toxic because of the competitive aspect?
It just matters what people deem sportsmanlike conduct. for the most part. I've said this before. It's like whatever sportsmanlike is that year, you can get away with it. Next year, it just might change. It might be less. You know, we can all say that like most cursing is probably sportsmanlike. Like if you talk about any sport where like two football players on the line, we're just gonna be like, STFU, bro. Like they'll probably say something along those lines, right? Like those things exist already. So it really just determines like what your level of comfortable is when it comes to sportsmanlike conduct and what you think sportsmanlike is, or what the game authority deems sportsmanlike, right? Because like, you know, Overwatch says no cursing. Just like
Terms
don't
of
curse.
service, yeah.
Yeah, like don't curse. And I'm fine with that.
We saw that top player, the MVP of 2022, I think it was, and the rookie of the year of 2022. He just got banned and he was like this close from not being able to compete in the new tournament because of it. He wasn't able to be on the team for a hot second. So like that might be a great point, and to kind of like make it concise, it's read the room, right? You know, there's a competitive banter to things, like a playfulness that, you know, having fun, it's part of. There's a in your head meta game aspect to get psychologically warfare in. But like there's a limit, and like you got to kind of read the room with it, how it, and like even with these big companies, you got to see what they're seeing as cool or not cool.
One of my favorite unsportsmanlike things that I don't think are really all that unsportsmanlike in League, win or lose, if you type GG easy, it will set off the enemy team. Like if you won, if you lost, you set them off. That's it. Like it's over. And I find it's hilarious to me. Like I just lost 30-2. GG easy. Easy. Like, and they're just like, you lost, you idiot. Like they're screaming at me. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna go do my other thing. But now you're gonna talk to your friends about this idiot saying GG easy for the next 7 minutes. But that's something that like people get banned for. In that where they're just like GG easy.
Well, there's context is where it is. Like you could say almost anything and it be aggressive. And that's ultimately like the problem. And you're overly aggressive when the context isn't. And even then, not to defend yourself. Like you shouldn't get aggressive, because when you're stooping down to somebody else's level, you know,
it's how you say it. It doesn't necessarily mean like what you're saying. It could just be how you say it. One of my favorite things that's like pretty toxic, but I say it as like a jokey thing. If I lose a game and we're on comms and the enemy team is like, hey man, GG, good games. And I just go like, no good game, you suck. I'm just playing. A good one. Like,
you're right. Context is not delivery.
Delivery matters. Like you gotta have so much like, no GG, you suck. And I'm just like, oh man, I really hurt this kid. I'm just playing, bud.
Right, so in that way, what I want to do is we are in the last couple of minutes here. Like, any last thoughts about, like, you know, we had a brief topic of this. I'd like to continue this at it might be a continued thing, but any last thoughts about how is esports inherently toxic?
No, competitions are inherently toxic if you have to open your mouth.
And yeah, like,
why are you expressing yourself? Just play the game.
Just play the game.
You're in a karate tournament. Like the karate, like if you saw the Karate Kid, you saw Jaden. Don't be talking shit. Like that's it. Like, excuse me, now I'm Carson. Just don't even worry about it. Like, why are you talking to the person you're beating, or why are you talking to the person you're losing against? Wait until you get home, talk to your boys, and be like, yeah, this dude tore me up, man. I gotta figure out how to beat this guy. Like something along those lines.
That's right, exactly. And like you got to acknowledge that frustration so you can get better, but like don't devolve into it. We're going to talk more about this in later episodes, but I want to leave us with the Scrub Lord's Prayer from Core A Gaming. It's such a fantastic let me get that. Okay. Fantastic little mantra about the toxicity in games, because usually it's frustration and insecurity. So the Scrub Lord's Prayer is, my controllers weren't working. And if they were working, you were playing dishonorably. And if you weren't playing dishonorably, you were playing without skill. And if you were playing with skill, it's not fun to play that way, obviously. And if it is fun to play that way, well, you only care about winning. Blah.
Yeah. Obviously, cheese and camping is not a legitimate strategy.
All right, so I like to lead us off on this note. Thanks for joining us at the Esports Meta. Remember, toxicity is what you make of it and how you go about it. Don't be toxic, be competitive, win your match. If you ain't playing, you're if you're typing, you're playing. I'd say I'm jumbled. I need to take a break. Nick, hope you feel better. Well, see you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Bye.